I'm tired. I don't want.
You guys aren't trying anymore.
BackTalk.
He did it for me.
Hey, folks, I'm Tom Vasel.
Zee Garcia. Jello.
Sam Healey is good.
Now, we do the Dice Tower Awards each year, and one of the questions that we often get asked, and I get asked in different categories, I noticed was asked when Board Game Geek was doing their things, how comes there's not a category for indie publishers? And just to clarify, when we talk about this topic, we're not talking about the actual company called Indie Boards and Cards. Okay?
Right.
They just named their company that.
Right.
Indie Publisher of the Year. Well, that'll be us. Thank you.
Right. So the thing that I always come back to on this is, what makes a company an indie publisher anyway?
It's a fuzzy line for sure, because it's not like they go to a studio to distribute their movie or something, right?
Right.
There's a clear delineation of what an indie film is. It's a movie that did not get distribution through a distributor, right? What's an indie board game company? It's our association with that, or at least mine, I should say. I don't know what everybody else thinks. It's a small operation. It's, you know, a one-person operation, or two or five.
So,
it's a small...
So Stronghold is indie?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, let's start with that. Is Hasbro an indie company?
No.
All right. Is Asmodee North America?
No.
Is Cool Mini or not?
They have a lot of money, so no.
They also have a lot of employees, too.
They do, right.
Okay,
So,
what about
yeah, no.
AEG?
Probably. I don't know AEG that well, but probably.
So that's,
See, I'm like
See,
going
but that's
down.
like Cryptozoic is not, because Cryptozoic's got that, like, Cryptozoic money from other endeavors, right? They're not
like
just...
IDW, same thing?
IDW, same thing. They again, I don't know how well that company does.
Riot is definitely indie.
Right. They just got a couple bucks. They're just rubbing together
Yeah,
the pennies.
exactly.
Yeah. But most that's why that moniker doesn't work for me. Most board game companies are what I would call indie publishers. They're
Right.
not Parker Brothers.
Right.
They're not Hasbro. Right. They are so-and-so and his wife and their 2 employees. That's indie.
Yeah.
It's just a big part of your understanding and involvement in the hobby, because you or I are so into it, right? That's the thing. It's like considering a band that your cousin is in not indie because you see him every week. Well, they're indie. It's just in your worldview, that's kind of a big part of it. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm not explaining that quite well, but
Well,
that's how I feel about
the
it.
thing is, most board game publishers are way smaller than you think.
Right.
Right? You'll look at these games behind us, and they look fantastic and stuff, but most companies are one person, or maybe 2 or 3.
Right.
If they have 5 employees, you will think, wow, they're really doing well.
They're doing well.
They hired a guy for logistics? What? You know?
Right.
So people today I think indie is thrown around for a couple reasons. One, as a rallying cry. You know, people are like, well, I'm an indie publisher, so you should like me more than a big publisher.
Right.
Is that a reasonable thing? Should I say, oh, well, but I mean, that guy's struggling out of nowhere, and you're Fantasy Flight? Come on, guys. Is that reasonable to kind of cheer on the indie guys?
I guess the problem is that, I'm sorry, Sam, just one last thing I want to mention here. People confuse the word indie with the word new. You know, a lot of publishers are indie publishers. They're just not new publishers. Just because you just came on the scene with 1 game does not mean that this other guy that has done 4 games is not still indie. He's got to get the money from 1 game to make the next. He's not getting rich off of this stuff, you know? That's I think the thing that happens.
Yeah, that's pretty close to what I was going to say. But I mean, the whole idea behind backing the small guy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I understand the ideology behind that is that you want the small guy to win. We all want the small guy to win. But as far as a board game company is concerned, I don't feel a need to back a guy just because he's the small guy. If he has a good product that I think the world would benefit from or the hobby would benefit from, well, then yeah, I'll back the guy. But not because he's small, not because he's indie. I'm backing him because he has a good product.
Right.
You know? And the fact that he's small, the fact that he's indie has really nothing to do with me wanting to back him. I mean, Kickstarter is littered with poor products.
Right.
That, at least in my opinion, I guess some of these things that get kickstarted.
I'm going to argue that it's fact.
Well,
I'm sorry, Kickstarter's littered with poor products. I'm not saying Kickstarter's bad, but the vast majority of projects started there are not good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sure. So I don't feel the need to go back those people just because they're small and they need help getting that poor product off the ground.
Right.
If they have a good product, that's another thing, and that's where I don't agree with this whole idea of being, behind the indie publishers or what have you. If you have a good product, yes, I'll be behind you. But if you want me to get behind you just so that you can spread your wings and hopefully on your next excursion put out a good product, no,
right.
I'm not going to do that.
Do you think that's where people are drawing the line these days when they throw that word around indie? Is it crowdfunding? And if you are a guy who no longer does that, then you're not indie anymore?
Maybe,
but the thing about it is, so many of the big companies
are crowdfunding.
Go to Kickstarter.
They almost use it like a P500 type system.
Right, it's a pre-order system, really kind of how they're utilizing that. I mean, why wouldn't you take money now as opposed to later? Mm-hmm. Sure, we'll take your money now, right? But maybe that's what's meant these days by using that word indie. Someone who is just who doesn't even know the industry well enough to get a game published through other means, right? Maybe that's what they mean.
Somebody that can't that isn't using an established publishing company.
What's established mean?
Again, what would it mean in anything? You've got a good solid game underneath your belt, or a couple of solid games underneath your belt, or whatever the number of games that it would take to be considered established.
It's a fuzzy thing, though.
Right.
Definitely.
I mean, the whole conversation is fuzzy for that matter. But I guess maybe self-publishers are the true indie publishers.
Yeah, but this is my thing about it. The indie thing is thrown around usually because people want to be promoted as something special. I'm something different. I'm new, I'm indie, and they want two things. They want promotion on that regard. You should back me because I'm not one of the big boys, and I should get a little bit more of a free pass. And I disagree with both those aspects. Mm-hmm. I'm glad the barrier for entry in the hobby is lower, but the fact is, you mentioned movie theaters earlier. We don't have 5 big studios that control everything.
Right.
When you go to a movie theater, there's a couple companies that have all the movies there. Mm-hmm. What is 6 or something? I don't know how many studios there are. And for another movie to get someone in there is hard. But now we have the internet and we have game stores. And you can get your game in there as long as you hook up with one of the distributors. And sure, Asmodee, North America, is the biggest chunk, for sure. Wizards of the Coast. Hasbro,
right?
Mattel, well, that's part of Hasbro now. There's these big companies out there, but if you make a really good product, you'll get out there. And I don't think you should get a pass. I don't think I should say, well, these guys are, they're independent. So the vast majority of the board gaming industry is independent. You are no more special than everyone else. And I feel like most of the time when this is thrown around, it's in a self-promotional way.
Well, they're hoping to do that whole bandwagon advertising type of style where they're saying, "Hey, I'm just one of you," but the only people who are going to buy into that is people who are lacking knowledge of the industry. Because go to any board game convention, really. I mean, not even like the big expensive ones. Any half-sized board game convention, and you are going to meet the person who runs Stronghold, the person who runs Portal, not their employees, not their minions. They'll be there because the company has a few people working there,
Right.
And so it's just a misnomer. This whole I'm just one of the people. It's just me. So are most of these companies, really, because they have a good logo and they know what they're doing. Doesn't mean you then get a free pass because your logo is crummy and your logistics are kind of flawed. You know, it just means we should be rewarding the people that just they and two other helpers are able to pull this off. You know, that's how I see that.
Right, and I think this affects the industry as a whole. Don't tell me indie publishers are trying new and innovative things. Now, some of the most innovative games every year are from some of the bigger publishers. But again, they're not that big.
Right.
So you got to come in here and say, and you can't use your status as a special needs thing. We're not giving you a pass because, oh, well, this is your first game? Well, then, you know. No, there's enough information out there with the internet, with things, for you to make things good.
Right, right.
So do it.
Do it.
What do you guys think? Tell us in the comments. What do you think about it? Indie games? Who's an indie publisher? Who's not? Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
Zee Garcia, thank you, everybody.
Sam Healey. See you on the flip side, y'all.
Woo!